Welcome to TDA's podcast, The Voice of Digital. Here we have today Rebecca Danko. I am Chris Wallace, and here our guest, Rudradeb Mitra. He is a graduate from Cambridge University. He has built his career in the field of artificial intelligence. Since becoming an entrepreneur, he has 6 businesses in 4 different countries with multi-million-dollar revenues. He is currently mentor at Google Launchpad and Founders Institute in Warsaw. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
We are now at the Innovation Island conference. So in Ravine, how do you like it? Today you had a speech about AI and machine learning. How do you think the audience reacted to your speech? And
Well, normally I would have perhaps, I thought, I gave the feedback that I got after the speech was quite interesting. Normally I would have expected more engagement from the audience, but I guess maybe they were consuming the information. But overall, I got some really interesting feedback, not only during my talk, but afterwards. Some people came to me and yeah, I thought it was quite good.
Well, that's good to hear. I guess one of my first questions for you is what currently are you working on in Google Launchpad and the Founders Institute? Like what sort of mentorships, or what are the details of your mentorships with these different businesses?
So as being a mentor of these two, for example, what Google does is they have in different cities, they organize some events, and then they sometimes fly me into that city and I mentor the startups in that city. So for example, last month I was in Serbia, in Novi Sad, and there were around 10 Serbian tech startups, and I was the mentor for the first product day. So I spent like the whole day with them, some of the startups, and kind of mentored them, help them take the product from the current stage to the next stage.
Okay, that's basically what I was asking in some sense. Like, I guess everyone has different ideas of startups. Ultimately, they never really understand sort of hurdles that startups may run into over their starting formative years. What sort of advice do you usually give these startups when you go to mentor, other than what you're saying?
So one thing that I believe a mentoring or advising should not be about giving opinions, because even the best and the smartest people could be wrong about in their opinion. But I think mentoring more should be about making them think or find the answers themselves. So for example, when I was in Novi Sad, many of the startups didn't think through that who are the early adopters, what problem they are solving, and what value they are creating. So I didn't tell them what the answers to those questions. I just pointed them out that spend the next 1 hour and try to answer those questions. And the process of doing that make them realize that they have a lot of things to think through and find out.
I understand.
So the best mentoring is not telling. The best mentoring is asking them the questions and letting them find out answers.
I understand. It's very wise.
so you built your career in the field of AI and machine learning. What made you decide to go into that specific field and build your career on that?
So I started in 2002 actually, and AI, because machine learning at that time was not so popular, and I was mostly working on planning, AI planning. The reason I chose AI was because I always liked mathematics, and in computer science I thought artificial intelligence, especially in the planning world, required good mathematical understanding or background. And it always attracted me to see if machines can build, if not human, but at least some level of intelligence. So that's what made me initially go to the AI field.
And in this year, since 2002, what has your vision came true? Like, did you you said like machines can be similar to humans or develop similar to humans. Did that come true? I mean,
No, and
or do you
actually,
see that coming true in the future?
I actually hope not. I think that, of course, when in 2002 was this view, that's how it started. But after being in AI field for many years and looking at what is happening now, I think AI and machine learning are better off solving problems that humans are not good at solving. Through learning, yes, maybe intelligence, but I'm not very in favor of creating machines that can have emotional intelligence like humans. Or so I think there are certain things that machines should be doing, and that intelligence could be at the level of doing a task better, faster, which humans are not good at. But I would not favor machines building emotional intelligence. And it doesn't make sense also. I think humans are much better doing that. But a lot of people today think that there will be a time when machines will take over all the jobs, which I don't see happening, primarily because as one of the things that's happening as more and more technology is coming into our lives, people are getting more and more lonely. And there is a real need for people to connect more and create this emotional connection with people. And that machines cannot or should not replace with. So I would see that humans more focus on jobs or do things that requires emotional intelligence, connecting with people. That's for humans. And for boring, routine job that humans hate anyway doing, machines take over those jobs through intelligence, through learning.
Yeah. But we all have this, I mean, not all of us, but we all have seen the movies where, you know, machines take over the world and the humans. How do we stop that from happening? Like,
Well, I mean, watching Hollywood and
I mean,
reality
of course,
are,
that's
of
just
course.
Hollywood. It's not based on true scientific facts, but
I guess like Stephen Hawking did have real fears, and there are a lot of people in Silicon Valley that also have real fears that this could potentially happen one day. I don't think they really I mean, no one really understands how this could happen. Like emotional intelligence inside of an algorithm, it doesn't really make much sense to me, at least. But the concerns were, I guess, stirring up a lot of negative connotation in the media. When people hear or heard Stephen Hawking say such things, it only caused more fear in people who were not educated on the subject, I think, or in these people.
That is, I think, the sad part of the AI. I think that's what also motivates me to write and speak more, to show that there is a vast amount of problems that machine learning can genuinely solve, that humans are not able to solve, and that will benefit the society as a whole.
I agree.
Unfortunately, people do not talk about those. People are either talking about these jobs being taken over by machines and, you know, taking over the world, which first of all is quite far off from reality and I don't think does good to anyone. So that's what I would say.
And I guess on a similar note to speaking about how machines should not replicate emotional connections between people, I've also read in the past that let's say TensorFlow, it's very good at analyzing and recognizing photos, but to actually recreate a photo, it's not so, it isn't capable of doing this, but in some sense. Is this true?
Well, I mean, at this point, technology may not be. Maybe in 5 years there will be. But that's still not emotional intelligence.
Of course.
So,
I just meant in some sense, like it's artistic, and people associate this with more of a personal touch, this emotional connection to the art, but...
that's still certain behavior repeating certain patterns in a way. But that's still a connection between a human and an object or a painting. But I'm talking about connection between two people, or more than two people. Or things that makes us connected with, like, at the emotional level, and that's what I don't think, or jobs which requires that emotional connection. I can tell you, it's a big difference between I going to a shop and having someone smiling, receiving me, and having a nice conversation with me. That's, I think, humans should retain, and machines should not replace it, because then life will be really boring.
Yeah.
Then we all end up being like just going like this and buying and this.
Additionally, I see an issue of, in this sort of scenario, the line becomes blurred between what you should have an emotional connection with and what you should not. It's better for humans to have the connection with each other than to create something to replace that. I do
Absolutely.
agree in that sense.
And that's one aspect. And the other aspect is, let's say, decision making. The current algorithms of machine learning are kind of black boxes. So why a decision has been taken, there is no record, there is no provenance for that. So if, for example, a decision is made which is wrong, why was this decision made? You cannot actually track at what made that, because it kind of somehow learns the weights based on the previous data. There is a paper came out as ethically designed AI, and what it says that the machine should be accountable, transparent, and it's quite important for being that. The current algorithms are neither accountable nor transparent. So you cannot use them for things like replacing a doctor. You can help a doctor to make a better decision. So you still need the human to make those decisions. And I think that's where machines and machine learning should go, helping us be a better doctor, helping us being a better, maybe a banker, or maybe helping us being a better, whatever it's what we are doing. And if we are doing things which are boring and routine, and we anyway hate the job, yeah, let the machines take over that job. That's the way I think machine learning and AI should go, and I think it will go. I don't see humanoid robots, standing everywhere behind counters and giving us things. If you look at the history of technology adoption, you'll see that technology is not adopted by just because someone thinks that that's good or it's cheap. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects that creates reasons for adoption of technology, and I don't see how that machines could take over the whole bond creation aspect, and humans will be very okay with that. That someone just replacing the someone smiling or saying hello and things like that for jobs. Yeah.
It is always nice to get the human touch, the personal touch,
Yes.
in sort of any sort of transactions like this. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. There is I read it somewhere very interestingly that what they did, that they classified two kinds of doctors. One kind of, and they didn't say what they were talking, they just classified the tone of the doctors, the way they are talking to their patients. In one of the tones, it was just a monotonic tone. So you cannot hear what he's talking, he's just the steady monotonic. In the second one, it was like ups and downs. That means he was a bit emotional. And by far, I don't know the statistics, but by far, the doctors who had a monotonic tone had a huge more percentage of being sued than the doctors who were not having monotonic tone. So even at the level of patient suing doctors, that how a doctor is talking to someone has a huge impact.
Of course, it forms an
Because how it makes humans feel.
Yeah.
So these small details we don't know, and I think machines cannot take over all these emotional connections between people, which is very, very important.
I guess another question I had was, are ML algorithms a little more than, or are they not so similar to like chatbots? I know that chatbots way back in the day, or 10 years, 12 years ago, in essence, I guess, acted similarly, where a lot of people would put input, and then they would start to be able to form output from all the inputs put in. I mean, there was a case, I think, 2 years ago now of the AI created by, or ML algorithm chatbot, that was like a teenage girl that was completely corrupted by the amount of people on the internet that were just putting volatile, disgusting things into the chat. And I guess one of my questions, or this question, is that do ML algorithms need a training period? Like where you train them to either look for specific data or you input specific data that they should be, I guess, focusing on?
Yeah, that's the basis of machine learning, is you are training, it's learning based on the data. There are different kinds of AI algorithms. Machine learning is a particular kind of AI algorithm where you are learning based on the previous data. So you have to have, reinforcement learning to some extent is the current data, but you are using data to learn. So one of the key steps of building a machine learning algorithm is cleaning the data. So your output is as good as your input. So if you put junk in, you get junk out. So that's one of the key aspects, is how do you get a clean data to train your to machine.
Then I guess this also ties in with the non-transparency, because as much as we should, I guess, to be transparent, we should let them learn on their own in some sense. You still need to guide the data, otherwise you get improper results for the application that you are trying to use this for.
It depends. So if your data, let's say, for example, it's an IoT device which is giving a data, and that could be on different weather data, it could be water data, temperature. So that data being that is expected to be the clean data. But the moment, yes, you expect humans inputting some data, there is always a chance of people putting junk, and then you of course have to have a filter to make sure that you don't put all this junk data into the machine. So it depends on the source of the data. So where are you getting the data from?
It's the same in any field, I guess.
Yes.
You got to check for bias.
Yes.
Which ML algorithms do you believe are the most promising at this moment? Be it open source projects people are working on, or things that you have personally worked on?
Well, I find reinforcement learning a very interesting machine learning algorithm. Primarily because it learns the way humans learn, in a way, right? So what has happened that Google and Facebook have a huge advantage, primarily because they have access to all the data, and new startups are finding difficult to get the data. In reinforcement learning, you don't need to start with a huge bunch of data, and there are a lot of different problems that you could, and a lot of problems don't have those kind of data.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting learning, but unfortunately till now it is most of the products that has been built is within a very, you have to limit the space, and because you need to track how the environment is reacting to that. But there is I think a lot of interesting problems could be solved using reinforcement learning, and I think that's one of the things that I think should be checked. And in general, there are startups. I once gave a talk about machine learning or AI beyond Facebook and Google, and there are some startups in the valley who are trying to build a different kind of algorithm, of different way of learning in the whole machine learning way. They don't speak a lot about things what they are doing, but I think there is a need to look into AI in a different way, which makes systems accountable and transparent, because the current algorithms are not accountable and transparent. So that's another direction that I think is very interesting that perhaps we should go into.
Would blockchain potentially remedy this to some extent? If I don't know how. Well, okay, let's say the input data was verifiable from the blockchain. It doesn't matter for this hypothetical what the data is necessarily, but just if you had batches of verifiable data, then in a sense, I would believe that blockchain would help ML algorithms have, I guess, authenticity or integrity, more integrity. Is that the case? Or?
I mean, with my blockchain, I have a bit different kind of view. It's a too early stage of actually technology-wise also. I mean, there is a lot of vision being spoken about, but if you look at really the technology, it's actually very basic level still. The smart contracts and everything is very basic. So I don't know where it will go. I think to me still blockchain is in the height of hype. And if you look at the history even of IoT, I remember started working in IoT in 2010. And then I remember people were saying IoT will basically change the world. Everything will be connected and everything will be like this. Didn't happen. 8 years now. The reason for that primarily was because there was no strong use case of IoT. People were in a hype phase, people were talking a lot about the vision, but there was no real use case of IoT. I see blockchain in the same category still, to some extent. I mean, there are of course certain use cases like IoT had, but for a mass adoption, I don't see that. So I don't know where would blockchain be connect with machine learning. I think as an idea, I like it. I like the decentralized idea of decentralized.
I think everybody does.
Yes, but that's it. That's where it kind of ends.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, again, I think some people have misused that for their advantage, doing ICOs and the bitcoins getting so money, and I think they have done maybe good to themselves, but a disservice to the technology overall. And yeah, that's my take of blockchain as of now. I don't know where it will fit in terms of how machine learning and blockchain can fit, because I still see blockchain as being the infrastructure. Yeah, it could potentially have a way to check the data source and things like that, but you don't necessarily need a blockchain for doing that. So that's the key also. Most people who are using blockchain, to my mind, are using it not because you really need to use a blockchain. It's just maybe because it makes them more fancy and makes them more maybe raise money and things like that.
It's like a lot of firms when they use the term AI, they're not really talking
It's the same
about
with AI also.
It's
absolutely.
really a buzzword most of the time.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
true. Yes.
So you talked about decentralization, and I found an article or topic where you talked about this decentralization of job market. So you are currently living in Poland, right?
Yeah, for now, I kind of live nowhere, but I was in Warsaw, yes.
So how do you see job market being, in a way, fair to everybody? Because, okay, Eastern Europe and maybe Balkan area where we are kind of less fortunate in the way that we have maybe less opportunities to promote ourselves or become more visible to the startup community when we are talking about startups. How do you think this problem can be solved?
If you look at the history of work, right? So as I wrote that you started with people making offices, then there was an era of outsourcing. That was primarily driven by cutting the cost. So, but what has happened then, that although they managed to cut the cost and move to another part of the world, but then those parts of the world developed to some extent. And now, for example, for certain jobs like machine learning engineer or blockchain, the salaries is by and large what is in Bangalore, like in India, is same kind of in Silicon Valley. There's not a huge difference. So it's already happening that somewhat the salaries are becoming flat. But still, it's not completely out there. So what I think would happen, and what should happen, is for a given task that needs to be done, company should, let's say through a infrastructure, could be like a blockchain, but whatever, says, okay, this is the task that we need to be done. And people can do that task in a decentralized sector, so not like an outsourcing company with a centralized firm. And anyone, it doesn't matter where he's located, can get the task done. So if you could build such a system where people, no matter where they are living, they get the task done, and the company or the person who's giving the task doesn't care about whether the guy is sitting in X location or a Y location. He's just saying, okay, I want this task to be done, get this done. Someone from anywhere in the world takes the task and gets the task done. So in a very simple way, you could look at, for example, in GitHub, you could create issues, and then you could assign bounties to those issues. So imagine you create a task, then you create 20 issues, and you say, okay, this issue can get this much, this issue can get this much. And then he doesn't care who takes up that issue. Whoever, wherever he is, he takes it. And the assignment of the bounties to an issue is based on the complexity of the issue rather than on who is taking where. So if you could build such a system at a smaller scale, you could easily imagine that where the assignment or the task or the work is getting more fair based on your skill, not based on your location. And I think that's really required, because this is not only a philosophical view, because companies in the Valley, one of the problems for them, or even in Western world, is finding good, talented people. While there is a lot of talented people around the world, especially in the tech world, people want to be free. They don't anymore want to go to this 9-to-5 kind of job. No matter how much they earn, they start valuing other things. And just by putting a ping pong table or a bean bag doesn't help that solution. It doesn't do anything to that. So companies have to reinvent anyways if they want to attract people to work for the things they have to do. So in the beginning of 90s, the outsourcing was driven by cutting the cost. But now it's not anymore cutting the cost. It's just about finding people who could do those work. And then they have to, anyway, if they know that there is a guy sitting in XYZ, they should just be able to say, okay, that you get the work for the what is actually the value for the work, rather than because you are located there, I'll give you less money. So that's, I think, and that is more so will happen in this new emerging technologies, because there is a scarcity of people who know these things. But I hope that that trend will slowly also move towards other technologies, because more and more people are traveling. They are not location based in one country, they are location independent. So this whole thing will become, I think, more and more flat over the years.
I agree, and digitalization really helps.
Of course,
because
yes.
you just need the internet and
yes, and companies are already realizing that. They are getting used to that. I mean, even I remember I was speaking in Accenture, and they said our innovation center provides this flexibility so people can come in their shorts. Normally they would have to wear a suit. Well, that's not a flexibility in my mind. For them, that's a flexibility. So they're already giving in to certain aspect, and it's just a matter of time when they said, okay, we don't need anymore someone to sit in my office next to me, because I need to get that guy work for me rather than I care about him sitting next to me. So I think that's what would happening anyway going forward.
this is actually what Top Digital Agency is trying to do, to connect agencies and companies that need the services from the agencies. In a way, we are trying to make this whole process transparent, and that anybody can apply to, any agency from anywhere in the world can apply to the job
project
work
proposal.
to job proposal. Yeah, and I think in the future we will see more and more this kind of development in the job market.
Yeah,
and also B2B, as we are a B2B company.
Absolutely. I think there's still hesitance from many companies, but it just over time they need to be educated to also about it. They need to be shown that it could be done. and then I think it's just a matter of making a decision. And I know many companies are already moving in that direction, so that's just a matter of time.
So in the future, maybe we will all be digital nomads and travel.
Yes, I think if people want to do that, I mean, there is of course
it depends.
there's
on
a flip
person.
side of doing that, and which I also do talk about and write about, that you end up being homeless, not in the form of not having money to live in a home, but you don't have a concept of a home. So that's another flip side of being kind of a nomad too. But at least that's a choice that you are making.
You don't have to be a nomad for forever.
Absolutely. So
for a certain amount of
exactly.
time.
So that's the point. But at least that it leads to more freedom, and anything that leads to more freedom is good. The people can make a choice. That's good. So I would definitely see that that's already happening over the last 5-10 years, and this will continue doing more and more.
Do you have any future plans for your career, or
no?
Now you're in Croatia. What's next?
In terms of I don't make future plans. Actually, I believe what has worked quite well for me is just let the universe make the plan for me, and I just go with the flow.
Okay.
I think that's the best way to do it, honestly.
It is the best way to go.
As far as if you try to control life too much,
absolutely,
you set up yourself for expectations that may or may not come true,
and you are not open to other things.
True. Yeah.
But it's also not easy. You have to really believe that the universe is always on your side.
Yeah. Otherwise, it could be grim in some cases.
And there are days when it's grim.
Yeah.
And I would not say I'm always happy. Of course, there are days when I'm unhappy. But I think looking back, overall I'm happy, and I think I feel that even if at days it seems like what should I do and not, but I think you just have to believe that everything has a reason behind that. So I mean, in my life I've made many times such decisions. One of them was when I finished Cambridge. Of course, I had the option of going to get a job, earning a lot of money in London, and my other option was doing my own startup with almost no money. And I remember that for me it was not even a choice actually. I think I never even thought of going to a corporate and getting a job. So for me it was obvious that I have to just do this. What ended up being was, because I didn't have money, I ended up living in a room which was size of a bed basically. So you open the door and there is a bed
right there,
and that's it basically. But I can also tell you that was actually I like that, because it keeps you very focused. You don't have too many things here and there. You just have the bed and you have a window. I love that window because I could see outside and there was a tree. So and when I look back, that was the beginning of the whole minimalistic. I'm a minimalist too, and I could see there was a purpose, because growing up in India when I was coming from poor or lower middle class family, of course my dream was to own a car, own a house. That defines success, because we relate success to owning a car and a house.
Every country has their own different basically material goods that they
define as a success.
Yes.
So even then I was like okay, that makes. But when I look back, I think that was the start of my whole journey, not planned.
Of course.
But again, the universe worked well for me because I'm happy today that I'm a minimalist. So you just have to let it flow and follow what your heart really says. And I think everything then works out.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a nice way of living and thinking, actually.
It is as I said, sometimes struggle, but in my case, because I have a very strong intuition, at least in those decisions, I was absolutely sure. I didn't even thought of going to a job. But there are times when you do have this doubt, and I know a lot of people have that. So then I think what I would advise to people is meditate. Spend 2 hours sitting by yourself and think what really makes you happy, not what would make your neighbor happy or your partner or your mother or father or what a society will think. Think what would really make you happy. And I think within an hour or two you know the answer. And once you know that answer, just do that. So that's why meditation is also very important in knowing yourself.
It's also a good way to balance, to de-stress, all of that. It's
That
got
is true.
additional benefits.
Yeah, that's additional, but
Yes,
I
yes.
use this more to know myself.
Yes, yes.
And then it's easy for me then to follow what I really want to do,
Yeah.
and then let the universe work in your favor, because then you're not forcing anything.
Everybody needs self-analysis every now and then, just to really, what you were saying is true. It's, you must understand why you're making these decisions first before you make them,
Yes.
or understand why you want them in some sense.
Yes.
Otherwise, you may end up 70 years old, have all the money, all the things in the world, but you never really lived.
Your life, absolutely, yes.
I agree. I guess on a different note, I had one question about smart cities and AI ML integration into smart cities. As you were saying earlier, it's better if jobs that humans don't enjoy doing were left to machine learning algorithms. Which not use cases, but which usages do you see AI and ML being implemented into smart city infrastructures, or as far as future developments?
So in everything actually, because in 2010 I started working on a smart metering project for in Czech Republic. There's an energy utility company called SES, which I think is the biggest in this region. And so smart city has smart meter, smart transportation and everything. So
End to end, ultimately.
yes, so and I wrote about it that also the bigger picture, if you look at IoT, the problem with smart cities, of course a part of IoT, is that a lot of that was, or that has been till now, was basically collecting the data. But to be something smart, you need to add intelligence to that. You just cannot just collect the data. And the intelligence comes from the machine learning, right? So to successfully have a smart city, you need that city to be smart. And smart is not just adding a sensor in your room to collect the data,
You need to do something.
but put it back to the user. So till now, over the last 4 or 5 years, or even 7 years, I think a lot of focus on smart city, smart meter was just put a smart device in your home to collect the smart data, but not on the back. And I think now there's a trend where machine learning is going to provide that value to the end user finally, and then the adoption will start, because at the end it's the end user who has to find the value of adopting technology.
Yes. I mean, from I guess basic business theory, it's always early adopters are the ones to first pick up everything. They're the trend setters in this sense. They more of I would say not always do they connect with an idea that actually will come to fruition. Sometimes they're on the hype train and then it just goes away and never really amounts to much. But I do see AI and ML passing that already. It's beyond that point in at least my opinion. People are starting to take it more seriously. People are unfortunately both talking positively and negatively in the media about this.
Yeah, so it ends up always being the value creation. Like, what value are you creating? Is it just a hype, is just a vision, or actually you're creating a value by solving a problem? And there is so many problems that machine learning and, well, primarily machine learning at this point is able to solve in various sectors, which I often have written about: retail, banking. So yes, it has already passed the chasm, as typically technical words is used, from the early adopter to the early majority in some sectors. Primarily in retail, I think retail is already being used, and I think banking would be, insurance will follow up, and because at the end, in many of these machine learning solutions, the end user doesn't need to know whether it's a machine making the learnings, or why is he benefiting. He at the end benefits. He get a better risk premium, better loan. As long as that is he's getting it at, he doesn't care whether it's a machine learning algorithm or IoT or whatever. So it's the value that you have to start. I mean, Steve Jobs said something very nice. He said you have to start from the value, not from the technology. You start with that. What value are you creating for someone? And once you start from that, and then go backwards to the product, it's the same here. That if you could create value for the end user, then it will be adopted. And which I think AI and machine learning are doing that well.
I would agree. I mean, if you're able to truly justify what value you're creating for someone, that already justifies the existence or the need for this algorithm or this technology in general.
Yes.
Yeah, and people will get used to the technology as, I mean,
absolutely.
in the beginning.
If they see a value, then they will, of course. And if the value is 3 to 5 times better than what they are currently getting, of course they will use it.
Yeah.
I think we're almost out of time, actually, but thank you for being here.
No, it's okay. It was my pleasure.
It's
actually.
really great.
Nice talking to you. Cool, man.
And
nice talking to you.
thanks for watching, and remember, stay digital.